All right, everybody, welcome back to the Cashflow Chronicles. Chris will be joining us in just a moment, so I figured I would just kick us off and say hello, welcome. I want to talk about Abcellera today. I want to talk about a couple other things today. It is February 20th of 2024. This time tomorrow, whether or not I do a live stream with Chris, I guess I'll have to talk about or see how I am feeling. But I will be MateoDinero because your boy will be in La Mexico with your boy Tevis. You guys know Tevis. He does all the SoFi videos. He coaxed me into going into Mexico. He didn't have to twist very hard, but he had to cure my anxiety. So that being said, we will have a good time when we're in La Mexico, and hopefully we'll be able to do a few streams with Tevis, maybe on his channel. I would like to at least have one while I'm down there. And then obviously I hope to do one or two Cashflow Chronicles if time permits. You can see a little bit in the background, got some things hung up on the wall, got my degree, which I worked for, and a lot of library hours for that bad boy. But yeah, today let's just go through. SPY took a little bit of a pullback. Palantir a little bit of a pullback. Google hung out flat. Amazon came in a little bit flat since last week. Bitcoin still flat from last week. Oil prices still flat from last week. Natural gas still below $2 per MCF, which is very surprising. Nvidia taking a bit of a pullback today. Which was also quite surprising. Not 100% sure as to why. I'm sure we'll find out more when it comes to earnings this week. Apple below its all-time highs, but still hanging in there per se. So while we're waiting for Mr. Patel, just a quick shout out to my boy Ken. Beep, beep, you know who you are. Boba the dog. We are not bringing up Portillo's today, but we can talk about Apple. I know Chris has a renewed interest in Apple, so we'll go ahead and do that. Junebug, as always. So this is a new face. I don't know. Please introduce yourself. I'd love to hopefully see you around from time to time. Let's kick it off with the intro, and maybe by the time the intro is done, Mr. Patel will join us. See you guys after that.
The stock is going to go up, down, sideways, or in fucking circles. It's all a fugazi.
Sell it all.
Greed is good. Huge upside potential, upwards of $60,000.
This is my guy.
This is gonna sound stupid, but dude, the intro is actually growing on me.
Dude, it's comical. You think about it. Those are some quality moments of some great financial movies. I wish we had somebody that was a lot better at editing. That's not me. I'm sure if you did the same thing, you'd probably be like, "This is the greatest thing of all time." It might be to the fact that the audio has to get chopped in and out for monetary reasons. Like if we had a really good hip hop like sort of theme. Because I was looking, who is that? Those people, the Compound. You sent me those guys. You're like, this is who we should envision ourselves to eventually become. They have a really cool intro, and overall, they do a really good job over there. So, but anyway, man, glad to see you. How was your weekend? Did you do anything crazy? We got some good things to talk about. Doesn't have to be a full hour if Beep Beep's going to abuse you. So don't have to keep you the whole time.
Beep Beep sick. So
no.
Yeah. So we've just been under the weather. We went to a housewarming this weekend, and it's very interesting because I initially thought that they may have like overpaid for the house that they bought, but like when I went inside, they don't
watch the show, do they?
Huh? No, I mean just from the outside, it looked very like just out of place. Like it just looked, and then like I saw the asking price and I was just like, wow, what the fuck, man? They paid a lot. So I went inside, and dude, they had redone so much inside that like it was really, really awesome. It was eye-opening. It got to the point where I got so excited. I was telling my wife, I was like, man, I need to start looking for some land so we could build some houses, you know. And my wife had to calm me down. She's like, dude, just because you saw one house, like you don't have to keep up with the Joneses, you know. And it took me like a good solid 12 hours to just be like, man, if only I had a house like that, my life would be perfect. And then I realized that every month they're probably shelling out $6,000 a month. And I'm just like, yeah, not worth it, you know.
I mean, even for my tiny little house with property tax and everything, I mean, if I refinanced it at a good interest rate, I'd be shelling out $2,500, but I'm shelling out because I pay a little extra. I'm selling out $3,000 a month, man. And it's not even that nice of a place. Like, it's a nice little 3-bed, 2.5 bath. Like, I plan on renting it if I ever go overseas or something like that. But I didn't buy it to be a forever home. It's definitely not forever home ready for me. So, I mean, you think about it, that's, and I think that's expensive, and I do really, really well. So, like, the fact that I'm sitting here being like, damn, that's a lot of money. I don't know.
Dude,
It's tough these days.
I've been looking for homes around my area, and I'm not looking for anything like super like fancy. Like, I don't need like a Porsche sitting out front or like some huge piece of property. I just want something decent in a good school district. And I've come to a realization, number one, that I'm woefully middle class. You know, like I'm well off, but I'm still middle class well off.
No,
I don't know if that sounds like
you're not
a different thing.
Chris. You
right?
are frugal. That there's a difference between there's people, you are doing way better than I'm sure a lot of people are. But I talk to my buddies, and my buddies are like, oh yeah, I'm spending this much. I'm like, you're spending how much? I'm like, I make twice as much as you, and you're spending more than me in housing. So I think you're being very modest. I think you are definitely in the upper end of middle class if you are in middle class.
Yeah, but let me tell you, I've come to terms with that. And the other thing I've realized is everyone in Atlanta is either a drug dealer or a doctor. That's it. It's to me, because
I mean,
every time I literally for the last 72 hours, I'm like, okay, let me look at some of the housing that's around. Like, you know, every house that I look at within 6 days, it's already pending. You know, I'm like, what the F is going on here? Like, who is buying up all these damn houses? And the funny thing is, though, Matt, I realized two things. I look at the property history, and there are a ton of people that bought homes in 2021 and 2020, early part of 2022, and they're sitting on 3% mortgage rates. But here's the kicker. A lot of them had to leave for whatever reason, and they're putting them on the market as rentals, right? So I saw some of them, and I'm just like, and then you look at the price history, bought in 2021 and then rented in 2023, like listed, like middle of 2023. And then you see price cut, price cut, price cut, price cut, you know, and it's just like, oh, so that's what's happening. So a lot of people that bought these houses were thinking that they could either do short-term rentals or rent them out. And they're just not necessarily getting a lot of renters in there. And I mean, to some degree, I'm sure that they're fine, but I think that there's going to be an incoming wave of a lot of people who bought investment properties, kind of like being stuck with a crap ton of inventory that they just can't do. So I also did the math on what it would cost for that person to rent it out. If you got it at a sub 3% mortgage, you're fine. Like, I don't think that there's really that. You have a lot of wiggle room between the price and the amount that you can rent it at. But if you got it for like anything like recently, like 6, 7, 8%, bro, you are looking at, you will not find a renter for that property where it makes sense. Most people do is break even. If not, you'll probably be losing money every month. So I don't know. I don't know how some people can look at the median, because the median income in the areas that I'm looking, it's gone up, but it hasn't gone up that much. You know, so either there's just rampant speculation or a lack of inventory, and the people that are buying right now are FOMOing into the market. So, you know.
Yeah, I'm curious to see, because the place 2 doors down from me actually went up for rent. And if I rented it for that price, I would lose money every month. But I only put down 10% because I wanted to keep more money in the market. So I was like, I'm okay paying an extra $100, $200 a month, because I think for like to pay the extra, whatever it was, 10%, I would have had to come out like another 40 grand or whatever out of pocket. And I'm like, I could pay an extra 100 or 200 bucks a month, or come out of pocket and sell some stuff for 40 grand to put 20% down. I was like, I know what I'm doing. So I was like, I'll probably end up refinancing this place anyway. But anyway, the thought process was, I think if they were to put down 20%, had a slightly more favorable interest rate, like right now, I could understand where they're potentially renting it out. Especially if they're renting it out immediately, they might be a 25% down, depending on who it is, right? Some rental companies will, or some mortgage companies will let you do 15% for rentals, especially if you don't have too many. But if you have multiple, then like you do 25%. So I can see how they're breaking even potentially, but to actually be making a lot, I just don't really see it. But I'm with you. I mean, if you had a 3-4%, you have a lot more wiggle room, like you stated. And but anyway, I actually am curious. Do you live in like more of like the urban part of Atlanta, or are you kind of in one of the suburbs?
We're like on like the tip between the city and the suburbs. So we're like right, I would say we're right on the cusp of being the suburb. I mean, technically it is the suburb because if you just go like literally half a mile down, you see like single family houses everywhere.
Mhm.
And so our condo is like right off of an exit. So it's a pretty nice building. The funny thing is my condo building has Porsches and Teslas now. So even the people moving in are like pretty well off. I'm not talking about like an old ass Porsche. They're like a 911, 2021 Porsche. So it just goes to show. And even like my neighbor, the price that they got for their condo was like way more than they paid for. And this wasn't even that long ago. So it just goes to show that there really is a shortage of housing, but then there's probably something to be said about there are particular areas where it's a lot more desirable to live, so people are willing to pay that additional premium, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the keys to the current market where if you want to live in a pretty like dangerous area, I'm sure you could find a deal because I'm seeing like you could find houses, you know. But if you want to live in like a nice suburb with like great schools, you're going to be paying pretty much at the top of the range for a lot of places. So I think that's the major thing that I'm seeing. I mean, it may be, but that's like Atlanta. Like if you see Atlanta, it's pretty segregated. Like if you go to like the down south and to the east, like near the airport, it's a lot of like pretty like crime ridden areas, right? And then you go to the northern suburbs and it's really really nice, very safe. Like it's like two different worlds in Atlanta. So you have to, and the funny thing is I used to actually think whenever I heard Atlanta, I used to think of the bad parts only
Mhm.
because that's what you see, right? And I'm
Mhm.
sure that that's like that for a lot of places. Like I'm sure there's places in Houston that are very
Yeah.
similar.
Mhm.
And I know for a fact Chicago's like that too, where everyone's like, oh, Chicago's like the most dangerous city in the world. But then you talk to people and it's like, yeah, I don't live in like Chicago. I live in like a suburb and
Yeah.
it's like really, really nice. The schools are amazing. So, it's just a very like bifurcated system. So you just kind of have to know. And I'm sure it's like that all around the country too,
Mhm.
where there are parts of a city that are very like no-go zones, but then there are other parts like that are right outside of it that are actually really nice places to live.
Yeah. No, I hear that all the time because, like, if you look up Houston, it's probably one of the top 5 crime cities in the US. And so, but it's like, so when I was moving to Trinidad unfortunately has a pretty poor crime rate as well. And so my mom was just like, "Oh my God, it's so bad." I'm like, "Mom, I've been in Houston for how long at this point?" It was like 5, 6 years or whatever. And I was like, and I've never had a problem living in Houston. I was like, because I don't go to the areas where there are problems, right? If I go
Mhm.
anywhere, it's in kind of like the more, traveled areas that are safe and, don't really, but it's like anything, right? If you're going to look for trouble, you can find it somewhere. And I just try to
Mhm.
stay out of those areas most of the time. So,
Yeah.
but I hear you. I was just kind of curious thinking about that because I live kind of in like, I'm outside of the downtown area. It's a little bit more commercial where I live, but at the same time, it's like if I wanted to, within 5-10 minutes, I could be in the suburbs. And part of me is just thinking, it's like, should I just do what you're kind of saying? Should I buy a lot of land and build a house and get a little bit out of the city? But at the same time, I like my commute to work, man. Like that's one thing I took for granted when I was leaving my old apartment. Man, the commute was awful. It was like
Mhm.
I would have to drive. In the mornings, it wasn't bad. It was like 25-30 minutes. But on the drive home, it was sometimes mostly an hour. And it's just like, I feel like I've gotten my life back to an extent where I've literally gotten back like an hour and 15, 20 minutes of my life, which is pretty crazy. And I used to think like, oh yeah, I don't mind driving. But it's like, for what, like, anyway. Um,
Yeah.
cool. Well, I don't know if you had the opportunity to listen to Abcellera today or not.
I did not. I didn't get a chance. I slept most of the day.
I don't blame you, man.
Yeah.
Do you want to go through it at all? It was kind of a
Not
cool
really.
business
I mean,
update.
after I probably like I want to like have a fresh like brain when I'm listening to it. So I don't want to
For
have
sure.
any bias or anything. So I'll listen to it independently and then we can go from there.
Okay. Well, I was just
You
gonna
know?
say, I mean, I'll just give I don't want to dive too much into it, but basically it seems like they're gonna go forward with 2 INDs, which is kind of like
Mhm.
exploration sort of like drugs that are gonna be kind of petitioning for the FDA. So it's kind
Mhm.
of over my head, but overall it looks like they're hoping to go forward with that and eventually get approval in the long term to eventually be able to find them to be cures for several other potential things. One of them they labeled 3 or 4 specific things, which we maybe go over in a different day, and then the other one they're stating that they'll wait until after they get approval from the FDA before they release. And I don't know, it looked like a smaller market, but I don't know if it's because it's something that's very specific or they're first to market. And it seemed like what they said was like they're a first in class drug for this market. So I don't know if they're kind of exploring how big this potential market may be for that particular drug, which is
Yeah.
probably why they're doing the IND thing, right? If you make it so public, then you might have a lot more competition and lose out potential market share. But curious to see. The price of the stock didn't really move up or down too much, but so I was hoping that you'd either have something exciting to share for our public portfolio, not you specifically, but
Mm.
Robinhood would have something to show, whether it was up, down, or big. But unfortunately, it's
Yeah.
sideways.
For
So
me, right now, my main focus is pretty much macro. Like I am, just keeping my eye on the pulse of what's going on with the economy, what's going around the world, and recessionary forces are starting to take a hold. So the numbers in the U.S. haven't showed up yet in the official data, but I think that that's going to change over the next like 60 to 90 days, where I think we're going to start to see some of the impacts. Because I mean, dude, you go into Google, you see layoffs everywhere in tech, non-tech, everywhere. So that's one thing to just keep in mind. And then after that, you're also seeing delinquency starting to rise in some of the credit segment. So, we're in a very precarious stage of growth right now. So I on one hand, it's good because it's like, oh yeah, recession, that means that the Fed is going to cut interest rates. And then it's like, hey, recession, everyone loses their jobs, not good.
yeah.
So I think we're in for some very weird situation where there are times where you can make money in a scenario like this. And typically you want to just, like I was explaining on Finance Junkies, you just want to be in value. You don't want to necessarily be in high stakes growth that requires a lot of capital because you may not get that. And then also there are companies that have just so much bloat that they can cut their way into a good situation, right? So those are the two types of companies that I would say are worth keeping an eye on. So on one hand, you have like great companies like the Mag 7 that have strong cash flows, have a moat driven business that's not going anywhere. And then on the other hand, you've got the value plays that typically are get ignored by the market. So if you look at Verizon, it was up pretty good today for the most part throughout the entire day, even with the market being down so much. So
Mm,
um let's take a look at our overall portfolio, see what's going on.
yeah, man. Um, yeah, I was kind of curious. Let's see. Is this showing up okay? Yeah. So to give everyone that opportunity to look and just bring this up a little bit. Portfolio right now it's about 1,700 bones. I organized it by total gains and losses. So Celsius, because we have so much of the portfolio in it, is our
Mhm.
largest, up about 18%. Telz, we're also doing really, really well with that one, up to 15 bones. So we're up almost a third on that. TQQQ, while it is the largest returner of the portfolio, we don't have too much in it. So only $19 there. Verizon, we have a pretty decent position in Verizon, and so that's up a little bit. We did trim out Orsted because we were up about
Okay.
30 something percent on that. So cheers to us on that. And then Rocket Lab is kind of there. So Abcellera still hanging in next. It's still hanging in. Bros is the longer term. BPYPM is more of a dividend play. So
Yeah.
it's interesting sort of portfolio. It gets you kind of think a little bit, but we still have about 450 bones hanging out on the sidelines as cash if we decide to invest in anything.
Here's my thinking. Maybe right now with the cash, because BPYPM is going to what is that thing called? The record date is coming up, for next month. It should be March 1st. Let's take the 450 and dump it into BPYPM because it's an easy 3% return, and basically all we have to do is just hold it for a month. And I don't think it's going anywhere. It's pretty much flatlined for the last probably 6 months, so that this way we'll get in before the record date and we'll just let it do its thing because it's almost like a cash position for us at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see
So,
that. Yeah, I can see
yeah.
that. That might be an interesting thing for us to do. You said it was on March
Yeah.
1st, so just a quick interesting.
Yeah. The other thing we could do also is maybe Telzy's been catching a lot of bids, but we already got a good amount of exposure. It's still a hit or miss kind of situation, where if it really hits, it'll do really well, but if it misses, it'll drag everything down. So I think right now our exposure to Telzy is fine. Same thing with Celsius. Like their earnings are coming up at the end of actually not the end, but I think in March 1st or something.
Yeah.
So, so I think right now we should just basically go extra long on BPYPM, use that because then we'll get some good proceeds for the end of the month on the 31st. And we can keep it for now, just like almost like a cash position, and then just move it along if we really need to in anything else that we see. I'm also thinking about some lithium, but we're nowhere near the bottoming of lithium, in my opinion. I think there's still some people are saying that we've hit the bottom of the lithium commodity cycle, pretty much like oil did in 2016, 2018. But I think there's still a lot of production that's coming online in the next 2 to 3 years that might keep it muted. So I think right now I'm interested in some lithium plays, but it's let's chill.
It's interesting though. I was actually poking in the Finance Junkies chat that Exxon is exploring lithium, and Exxon doesn't go into things lightly. When we saw meaning UDOC, our friends at UDOC and myself saw how much land they were picking up in the Gulf Coast for their carbon sequestration projects. I mean, they're talking about $100 billion of potential investment in the Gulf Coast, mostly because there's a lot of steel factories, there's a lot of ports, etc. So thinking about how much they can offset, say, Houston carbon. And so you're like, Jesus, like $100 billion of a potential opportunity. So like I said, UDOC, Shell, a few others are playing around in a couple areas, and they're putting money here, putting money there, but they're not putting as much capital in like an Exxon is. The reason why I'm saying this is because Exxon, if they enter lithium, they're not going to enter it lightly. And so it's pretty interesting to hear they're talking about Arkansas is going to be like a hub for lithium and all this.
Do you know if they're doing spodumene, or is it the other thing, which is God damn it, what is it called with the pool that they usually just pump out the salts, lithium salts?
I'm not 100%. I really don't know. A couple of the ones that I've looked at in the past that are like in Nevada, they're more so the salts where they kind of pull out the brine and they kind of let it open the open. Or if there's also new technologies too, where instead of putting it out in the brine like pools that you kind of have seen, they put it through some sort of like separator. Whether or not that's going forward, I'm not 100%, but that's obviously less carbon intensive because there's a lot of mining that you still have to do. Once you kind of put it in the pools, obviously you're allowing a lot of different things to evaporate into the air. Then there's people wondering, well, what's evaporating into the air, etc. So there's that piece of it. So putting it into and pulling this brine out, it's kind of like oil production, right? Where you put it through the appropriate production facilities and you're able to kind of separate the components. There's that piece of it, which I'm actually kind of curious because I am a reservoir engineer by background. I kind of manage fluids production underneath ground through porous media, like basically sandstones and stuff like that. So I'm actually kind of curious from a lithium perspective, like specifically the brines, which I would anticipate that's what Exxon is kind of going after because that's what our expertise is, right? Is like these kind of subsalts. They're not really miners like a BHP Billiton or somebody like that. So I'm curious if what kind of situation they're going to set up. But and I also don't know how much capital they're setting up, but I hear a lot posted about it. So I'm curious where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, this is so what we're talking about right now is this right here. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen,
Yeah.
Matt? Okay, so there's different production costs depending on, you know, like what you're like when you're trying to get lithium ore out and you have to refine it. The cost between brine and hard rock is very, very different. So it's like for us with, you know, the Saudis, basically they take a giant straw, they put it into the ground and they start sucking and boom, they're good. Like they're getting oil at like $7 a barrel break even less. I don't even know. What do you think the break even is for the Saudis? It's probably
It depends. Are
barely
you talking about capital expenditure, lifting costs? There's so many
lifting
different ways
costs probably because they've already done all the
lifting
capital.
costs is dollars, like
Yeah.
probably maybe even less than $1. Since they
Yeah.
have all
And
the
then
infrastructure set up. Yeah.
yep. So if you think about it, that is the key, right? So lowest cost producers, they can survive and weather any sort of downturns without any issues. Whereas if you have a project that is very capital intensive, very refining intensive, then you're going to have a lot of problems right now. So as an example, with lithium prices down, there's a process called lepidite. I think that's what it's called, lepidite. We could take a look at it like outside of Cashflow Chronicles, like just me and you do some research because I think this could be a very interesting field to be in where there's not as much speculation, but in the future there could be, and there could be some really big opportunities. But right now, if you see at the price between hard rock and brine, hard rock is much cheaper to produce than what is it called? Than brine. So there are mines in Australia that have absolutely like dirt cheap break-ins, you know. I mean so not break-ins, what are they called?
Break evens.
Break-even prices, yeah. So you know, something to keep an eye on. So if you look at a company and you look at their presence, where they are, what kind of production that they have, what their true break evens are, you can see that when the industry consolidates, those are the ones that are going to survive. So me and you have gone through the bust and boom cycles of the oil market. So we know exactly what happens. Oil prices go up, everyone and their mother comes in, you know, they start doing deep Gulf oil exploration, all the capital rushes in, and then oil prices crash and all of those sources become non-economical. But what happens? The super majors that are still cash flowing, they just come in and buy up everything because all the capital expenses on exploration and development have already been capitalized. So for them, it's literally like pennies on the dollar now. So I mean, it sucks for the original investors who got in during the E&P phase, but the ones that are going to benefit are like the super majors, right? So I think the same thing is that we have to figure out who the super majors are in the lithium space, who can survive this current downward trend. And once the industry consolidates, what is the potential that they recover nicely over time? Because I mean, everyone knows lithium is the future. So keep an eye on those companies. And like I said, we'll ride the wave higher once the consolidation phase ends. And then you have this nice steady rise going forward.
Yeah, that's a good plan to think about it. A lot of these things, like you stated, are very cyclical, and yeah, you kind of have to find the areas of consolidation. And like honestly, people are talking so poorly about solar right now. I think in a good 6 months to a year, when interest rates are getting cut, it would be actually prudent for a lot of people to look for the companies that will be the front runners. Is it for solar? Is it, you have to have these companies when the pendulum starts to swing the other direction, who is going to be the front runner of that? And so, I originally was kind of thinking Orsted, Nextera. That's why when, they kind of hit their recent bottoms, I picked up some and we made a good 20-30% off of Orsted. So, but I think that there's still potential. And I think that lithium, is just getting to that point. And I think it'll be interesting to see what our findings say. And I wanted to add a little bit of color. You might be sitting there thinking, well, wouldn't brine be much easier to flow comparatively to, say, these hard rocks? Well, you have to think, when you have brine, lithium is a metal, right? And so you have to have this brine with super low concentrations of lithium. The more the merrier, but you have to think it's still going to be liquid at that point. So imagine how much liquid you have to pump out of the ground to be able to get sufficient amount of lithium for you to actually be able to, push it into appropriate levels where you can actually. So that's why you have all these pools, these massive pools that span for miles and miles and miles, acres and acres and acres. And then you have to.
Let's actually show people what we're talking about, because I think that helps.
Then you actually have to, after you kind of get it all up into this, then you have to go in and then clump it all up and then get it to a place where you can refine it, right? Versus having it in kind of rock form. But anyway, let's just listen to what Chris says.
Chile is one of the world's leading producers of lithium, the stuff that goes into all of our smartphone, laptop, and electric car batteries. And to see how lithium is pulled from the earth, I went to visit the operations of the mining giant SQM.
Hello, Ashley. How are you doing? Finally here.
My guide through the mines is Alejandro Bucher. He's a cheerful engineer who has spent years working in the Great Void.
When I think of something like a lithium-ion battery in a laptop, or even a Tesla with thousands of batteries, it's what, like a spoonful of lithium that would go into those batteries?
You would say in an iPad or in a cell phone, you could have something like a spoonful. In a car, you could have maybe 10 to 15 kilos of lithium.
It's the nearby Andes Mountains that make these mines possible. Over millions of years, minerals from the mountains leach into the ground. Then they collect together and form huge salt beds, rich in lithium, sulfate, potassium, and boron. Companies like SQM pump water up through the beds and store the mineral-rich liquid in large ponds. From there, it's up to the sun to do its thing and evaporate away the water, leaving the minerals and salt behind. And nowhere evaporates better than Chile.
Now we are heading for the first part of the pond operation.
There's a lot of ponds. Those are pretty.
As this is the first pond, you can see the salts forming in the surface.
You got salt parking spaces. Yeah, it's got to be crazy because you already have the harsh heat and cold, and then you have all this salt just blowing around everything.
These pickup trucks suffer a lot, but the other equipment, we made them from a special steel that really works good here. And now we're moving to the lithium ponds that are only 2 of the 44 million square meters that we have here. This pond, we made it so we can experience what is a lithium brine. When we have it in the big ponds, we cannot sample it. So we made this little pond.
What exactly is this stuff?
This is magnesium chloride. Magnesium chloride is a magnesium that we need to get rid of for being able to produce the lithium in the plant.
Okay.
We will only send on the track the liquid.
Just the liquid.
Just the liquid.
Okay, so this is lithium. What are the odds that some part of this is in my smartphone?
I couldn't guarantee it, but it's pretty sure that almost 100% sure that part of your smartphone went through this pond at some point in the past.
At some point. This is smartphone juice.
Yeah.
You know,
You guys must be excited that Teslas are selling well and that everybody's getting into electric cars now.
clearly
It's
this
very
was an older
interesting, but
video
It puts a lot of pressure on us. So
Why
we
is that?
will more than
'Cause they
double
said
our
that Tesla's
capacity
selling
probably
well.
in 4 years.
Chile may have the largest lithium deposits in the world, but it started to fall behind countries like Australia and China when it comes to production. And in China, it's a one-stop shop with the mining and battery production happening together. This is a leap Chilean companies have been unwilling to take.
Maybe you could make the batteries here in Chile.
Well, for me, it would be excellent, but the company, we're experts in hydrogeology, we're expert in mining, we're expert in producing lithium. If we put us to produce batteries, we're probably not going to do it well.
Things have been extra tense lately between the mines and the Chilean government. The feds have put strict quotas on lithium production, and they've also been trying to act tough and save face after some politicos were accused of taking bribes from the mines. Environmentalists aren't huge.
all right, man. I thought they would go into like the actual process more than like
The politics.
the politics of it, you
Yeah.
know. But like, hold on one second. Let me see this if this is something that's quick.
Man-made evaporation pools. This is where the sourcing of that really valuable mineral, lithium, begins. You know, I had read about this being the point on the Earth that gets the most solar radiation, and now I'm feeling it. That solar radiation is a key ingredient in this perfect planetary point for lithium production. Albemarle and state-run SQM operate on the edges of the Salar de Atacama, drilling beneath the crusty alien exterior to pull up superheated briny water filled with valuable chemicals, then putting that brine through a process powered by both nature and industry. Over an 18-month stretch, the brine is pumped through various pools, from gleaming blue ponds to yellow sludge, each pool containing a higher concentration of chemicals as the relentless solar radiation evaporates the brine and leaves the lithium behind. The end product is pumped into trucks to be sent off for refinement and to feed the growing global appetite for the key component of lithium batteries.
Oh. And then, so the difference between this and hard rock mining is something that is, hold on one second, Hard Rock, Australia. There's a lot of videos that are talking about blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure the process.
Yeah.
Hello, आज हम आए हुए प्लांट के ऊपर।
That's funny. That's Hindi. He's the guy's like Indian guy in Australia. Yeah, but basically hard rock mining is exactly what it sounds. It's just like concentrations of lithium that's stored in hard rock that they just crush and basically, you know, refine. So it's a cheaper process. So Western Australia is blessed with a ton of lithium. So
Yeah, it's interesting, man. I think sorry, you were gonna say something probably more.
no, there's some hard rock mines here in the US too, I think, that might actually have like really low break evens. And then go ahead. I'm sorry, I just had a sneeze.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, I think I thought there was a little bit more to do with the magnesium chloride that they were talking about, where they'd have to like really open up those pools a little bit more. So I thought they would actually have like D10s and stuff go into them and get a lot of that salt out. But I guess maybe they do, but I guess for the lithium piece, I mean, they're able to just pump it out. But I think it's really interesting how they show how they have to literally move that brine from pond to pond to be able to continue to lower the amount of concentration of lithium. I think it's definitely a process for sure. So I can understand the time piece is probably the time and the concentration of the liquid that you end up getting is probably what's so costly about it, because you have to think of how much space it requires to be able to evaporate all that volume of liquid, and then actually getting to a place where you have the yellow pools, which is mostly lithium concentrate. I'm sure it's not even still that high, versus if you have the hard rock, you're getting, I don't want to say pure because that makes it, but the chunks that you're getting, right, comparatively to say the brine that is, I guess, taking parts of the concentration from the chunks underneath the ground, is probably much better. But anyway,
I think there's a good question. V was like, why does it dry with the sun? It's a cost thing, I would guess. Like, why would you want to spend energy heating it up so you could evaporate it, right? And this way it costs you money, because remember, energy is not free. So maybe that's the reason why they'd have to probably like take oil and probably diesel to, or natural gas to the location to heat it up, so that this way they can, evaporate the water, where now they could just do it through the sun. So it's pretty much free, So I suppose, like, if you had a brine solution that wasn't in a sunny area, then that could be an alternative. But then you'd also have to factor in the cost of the energy also,
Yeah.
So I
it's
don't know. I
probably
mean,
it's probably pretty remote, right? So
yeah.
I don't know the answer there, but that's a good
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. I'd say right now it's a good time to find the lowest cost producers who have the ability to weather the storm, so that when the things do turn around, we can kind of like, profit off of it. I do know that CNBC has tried to cover this a little bit. The CEO from like Piedmont came on last month, and they were like, "Oh yeah, I think we've hit the bottom," and I'm just like, "Yeah, I don't think we've hit the bottom." You're biased enough to basically say that. But here is what ExxonMobil actually came out and said that you were talking about. It's a very interesting thing. Hold on.
I'm also thinking as well with the sorry, go ahead, pull that up while you're doing that. You have to see all the salt that they were dealing with, all the magnesium chloride they were talking about, to be able to evaporate that and separate it while you're trying to separate out the lithium as well is going to be pretty complex. And you have to imagine, how are you going to get all that salt out from whatever sort of heat exchanger or anything like that? So I don't know the answer. I'm just thinking, I know what I do on a day-to-day basis is deal with a lot of scale and salts that are within our fluids that we produce, and all that stuff. You have to think all the resins and plastics, and even though plastics, you think of man-made plastics, but all the different paraffins, etc., that come with all the oil and stuff that we're producing. You have to kind of clean out your separators, which is basically you're basically putting things in a container for long enough time so they can separate. Oil and water eventually over time separates, right? So, but you have to think, over time you get a bunch of different sediment in there that you have to clean out. And I'm assuming it would be something similar to that. Maybe they just haven't perfected that sort of methodology for lithium as of yet.
Yeah.
Low carbon solutions for ExxonMobil. Joining us exclusive this morning on Squawk Box. Dan, you guys are announcing plans to begin drilling your first well in southwest Arkansas at an area with a huge lithium deposit. Give us some perspective on the potential impact of beginning production that will ultimately come online in 2027.
Yeah, sure thing, Phil. Look, this is really exciting news from our point of view. We look at this as a win-win-win. We're going to be ramping up domestic production of lithium, which is a critical mineral for the energy transition that's currently being imported from elsewhere in the world. We're going to be doing that with a much smaller environmental footprint than the way that lithium gets produced elsewhere in the world today. And then thirdly, we're going to be drawing on decades of experience and know-how inside of ExxonMobil to build a profitable and high-growth new business.
But Dan, right now the lithium price, it's come off considerably from where it was earlier this year, last year. And a lot of people think that softer pricing is going to last here for a while. When you look out on the landscape, and I know it's hard to predict any price of any commodity, but what do you see?
Yeah, we're very much taking the long view here, Phil. If you look at the evolution of electrification of the light vehicle fleet, 1% of the U.S. vehicle fleet is electrified today. So there's still 99% to go. There's still a huge huge opportunity ahead of us. We see lithium demand quadrupling by 2030 and continuing to ramp up significantly beyond that. So we view this as a very large, very long-term opportunity, and that's certainly the way that we're investing in this, is to build a business very much for the long term.
Dan, you and I talked for a number of years when you were at General Motors about the push at GM and with all automakers to develop electric vehicles. But right now, hybrids are outselling EVs, and the growth of sales for EVs has slowed down. Are you a little bit surprised at the soft patch, if you will, the slower growth rate for EVs?
Well, I think we got to look at the data, Phil. In the third quarter in the United States, EV sales grew 50% year over year. That's a pretty good growth rate. And we see that high growth continuing for a long time. And again, if we're at 1% of the vehicle fleet today, and we need to get obviously to a much higher percentage in the long run, it's going to be very high growth sustained for a very long time. That may have some ups and downs and some fits and starts as we go, but again, we see very much long-term opportunity. We're playing the long-term game here.
Do you understand the appeal right now for hybrids as opposed to EVs? And again, we understand that EV sales are growing, but hybrids are having a moment right now where people are saying, I want that gas option.
Yeah, look, I think there's going to be multiple alternatives here, Phil. I think we're going to see, just as we look at the broader energy transition, there's an all of the above strategy. I think you'll see that in light vehicles as well. We've seen really rapid growth in EVs to this point. We think that growth will sustain. We think there's a role clearly for hybrids in there. And it's going to take a very, very long time for the internal combustion fleet to roll over here as well, just given the, that we're at 1% of the fleet overall today.
Dan, you were CEO of GM's subsidiary Cruise for a number of years, and I'm not asking you to comment on the current situation at Cruise, where they have suspended their operations and they're waiting to see what happens with the state of California. But there is a broader question, separate from Cruise, about whether or not autonomous vehicles will catch hold, as many expect them to, let's say in the next few years. Based on what you know from all the years that you spent at Cruise and what you know about the development of autonomous vehicles, when do you think that technology takes hold?
Well, Phil, as you know, I left Cruise just about 2 years ago, so I'm a little out of date. But look, I think the big trends of autonomous vehicles, electrification, those trends will continue. And I think the big variable, as you just pointed out, is what's the time for those things to occur? What are the things that are necessary for those to unfold here? And so those big trends, we're betting on the big trend of electrification, through the growth of this lithium business here today. And again, we think it's a very big, very long-term trend.
Hey, Dan, Phil didn't ask you to comment on it, but I would love to just get your views, given that you're an expert and you spent a lot of time at Cruise, you know this space super well. Where do you think we sit with autonomy at this point? What do you think happened at Cruise, and what does it say more broadly even about the whole space?
Yeah, look, it's not my place to comment on what's going on at Cruise. You should ask the folks at Cruise about what's happening there right now. Look, I think autonomy generally, we said all along, it's a huge challenge. It's going to take a long time to solve that challenge. Progress is getting made, and we'll need to keep working at it.
Very good. Yeah, I think it's a long-term sort of thing. I think one of the things that I took out from that, and I've continued to see, is the Japanese have a very different way, and I swear this is going to make sense. The Japanese have a very different way of planning their business cases, and they've always thought that hybrid vehicles were going to be the thing that wins over. That's why they came out with the Prius so long ago. That's why they haven't fully transitioned to a lot of EV whole vehicles. And a lot of that is because they anticipate that hybrids are going to stay much more relevant for a lot longer than people truly give credit for. And so I don't know if this is something that's going to persist, but I anticipate that there's a piece around having the ability to, one, I guess, have that hybrid vehicle, which is probably going to be a battery that lasts a lot longer than a whole EV vehicle. But two, I think you still get that range component, I think, which still hasn't wholly been as of yet. So I think that there's a combination of two. And I just, people always talk about electric vehicles are faster. Not everyone needs to go 0 to 60 in 2 seconds, right? So it's like
Yeah.
if you have that ability to find a sweet spot for everybody where, you can get up to speed quick, 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 0 to 60. You don't have to design your batteries to have all that huge energy dump. You might be able to get a little bit more elongation. But going back to the whole lithium thing, I think that this is something that is interesting. And yeah, I'm going to.
Dude, let me introduce you to the most ideal car. This is the Toyota RAV4 Prime. Okay, I'm gonna sound like a car salesman for a little bit, but it's
I
fine.
was just about to
Yeah.
say, let me introduce you to the Toyota RAV4
This
Prime
car, this car,
2024.
let me tell you, I did a whole bunch of research. This car, it is a plug-in hybrid, okay, that has 40 miles of just electric range, right? So if you want to just do complete 100% battery, you can run this car for 40 miles without having to charge. So if you want to commute, you drive this car. And what happens is it's got all the benefits of an EV motor in there. So you get the instant torque. Everything is really nice, fun to drive. But let's say you go over that 40. What happens is you can basically it goes into gas mode after that. So now you can drive it on gas, right? The range on this thing is 600 miles. Okay. Its MPGe score is about 94 miles to a gallon, right? That is crazy. So, I mean, it's all-wheel drive because of the electric motor and everything. It uses DC fast charging, so you could charge it at home. So right now, I think of it for someone like my wife who drives to work, right? Right now it's about 40 miles and she has a charger at work. So she could theoretically charge the car overnight, take it to work, and charge it at work for free and come home. And in Georgia, we have overnight charging like for like a pennies. Like literally, if you charge it off peak, it's like 2 cents. It's especially for EV, so you just have to apply for it. So, dude, our cost for this car in terms of fuel will go from $400, which she spends per month right now on her Lexus, because her Lexus
400.
takes it takes premium only, and it's 40 miles each way. Right?
40 miles. Okay.
Yeah, so it's up there, man. So if you think about it, this could end up saving us $400 a month. Every year could save us on an alternative base almost like $4,000, $4,800 if you factor in everything. So this car basically pays for itself. And if we want to go on a long distance trip, we don't have to worry about what is that thing called? We don't have to worry about charging. Like it's just okay, gas it up, let's go. And it runs for like 600 miles because it's got a hybrid regeneration motor in there also. So I mean, it's like the best of all three worlds, in my opinion. The only thing that I worry about with this is that how complicated it is to repair. Because the one thing I keep hearing is if you have an ICE car, it's ICE car. When you have an EV, it's EV. But now you're combining the two problems. Like, like with an EV, it's supposed to be super low maintenance because like you don't have to do oil changes and all this other stuff. With this one, I still think you have to do oil changes and everything else. So like I said, I wonder what it is, but it's crazy, dude.
I mean,
It's
I know
crazy.
that eventually, if you have an older vehicle, the hybrids do, but I guess I would just double check because I mean, I had a friend that had to spend like $5,000 or $6,000 to replace like the regeneration unit, right? So the ICE part of her vehicle would still work, but it wouldn't basically regenerate any on the electric side. Well, you need both of them to work in order for it to actually be a usable car. You can't just drive it on the ICE part and not have the electric part because they communicate together. So that alone, granted, it was in Trinidad. So it was $5,000-6,000 in Trinidad. I don't know how much it would cost in the United States, right?
Yeah.
So you have to think it's probably a little cheaper than it would be in Trinidad. But I don't think it's as much as like having to get a whole EV battery replaced. Because I think like if you think about whole EV battery, that's a 5-figure sort of number. Now I'm speaking from a lot of ignorance. So I hope I don't get crucified here in the chat section, the comment section, but I would anticipate the longevity of that hybrid components. Yes, you might have to do the oil and stuff like that, but the major hybrid components I think will still be cheaper than if you were to have to get an entire battery replaced from an EV vehicle. And I think the EV vehicle will probably last you. I mean, Tesla boasts the million battery or million mile batteries and stuff now. I don't know how much you could say for other sort of companies. I don't know that number. That's once again something I'm completely unknowledgeable or uneducated about. But from just what I've heard, that EV component, or sorry, that hybrid component isn't that expensive compared to the tens of thousands I've heard for having to get batteries and stuff replaced.
Yeah. So like right now, they also have like there's like a sneaky way to get the tax credit. Like some dealers are offering this. So basically, what you do is, okay, so I'm gonna give you guys some inside inform. Well, not inside, but it's just like a sneaky thing. So the car itself, right? A lot of great EVs are built in what is that thing called in Japan, right? So they don't qualify for that $7,500 tax credit. But plug-in hybrids are in a way kind of like you could do it, because what you do is if you lease the car, it's considered a like a technically it's under the dealership, so it's considered like a commercial vehicle for them. So what happens is when you lease the car, they take the $7,500 tax credit and it gets applied automatically for them. But what happens is they give it to you as a lease back, right? So they give you lease cash. So let me give you an example what I'm talking about. So this way you can see. So let's say this Toyota RAV4 from 2023. I mean, they have like the same deal for 2024s as well, right? So I mean, it's pretty pricey. Look at that, 51 grand, right? It's up there, but it's got, like I said, a lot of really nifty features in there. So if you see here, they have, huh?
The thing is nice.
Oh yeah, dude, the interior is amazing, man. Like I love it. Like I love looking.
You're gonna chauffeur me around one of these days.
Yeah, one of these days I gotta, like I said, if it's gonna save me like $4,800 a year, bro, I'm all for it. $4,800 a year, multiply that out by 5, bro. The car pretty much paid itself. You know,
Basically free.
I know some people are gonna say, well, you could just buy an EV, blah blah blah, and I'm like, yeah, but you know, like then I have range anxiety and all this other crap that I have to worry about. But you see this deal right here for the EV tax credit. So how it works is that you would lease the car, right? And then within a month, you would end up buying that lease out. So what happens now is that you pay for the car, right? But you're essentially, what you're doing is you're getting that lease cash right away. So whenever you like whenever you lease a car, they give you in the statement what the buyout cost is going to be for this car, right? So if you add all of this stuff up, you can damn it, I wish they did a good calculator on here to actually show you how the thing works. But basically what you would do is you lease the car, and then within like a month or two, you just buy the lease out. And so you get to keep the $6,500 lease cash back, and you just apply that against the price that you were going to pay. So like right now, if you want to go buy that car, it'll cost you $50,000 to buy the car if you buy it up front, or if you finance it, it'll cost you $50,000. But what you could do is go to them, lease it, and then within a month, go to a credit union and basically get a refi, like a car buyout loan, and you could buy it out using that car buyout loan. And so now you got that $6,500 tech credit automatically applied to the purchase price. You know, so yeah, but it has to be a plug-in. Like it can't be a regular hybrid. It has to be a plug-in hybrid. So
so we have some people. Sorry to transition, but then I think we can end after this. People in the chat wondering, 1, have we abandoned Dutch Bros? 2, why don't we invest only in food and water and drink companies? So somebody says we have to eat first. Technology is not important. Eating is number 1. Why aren't we all in on Kraft Heinz ketchup? Things like that.
Okay, so
any thoughts on that?
Okay, so let's distill this down into the first thing you have to do when you invest in any business, right? Is understand the business model. there are business models where you will see a crap ton of ROI and growth and scalability and everything along the way, and you'll make a crap ton of money in a very short period of time. And they basically, and I call them up into the right companies. Okay. You'll never see them go like this. You'll just basically see them just go like that. Okay. I know that sounds impossible, but I can show you business models that are like that. So let's take a couple of quick seconds and take a look. All right. So one of those business models is this right here. Synopsys, okay, is a software company. Okay. What they do is they're an EDA provider. So basically they do software design automation for chip companies. Okay. This is what Synopsys's graph looks like for the last 5 years. And if you go max out, look at this. Right? In 2008, you could have bought this for 26. And guess what? This didn't 10x. Okay. This 20x. Crazy. Right? Look at this. Up and to the right. Same thing with another company called Cadence Systems. Why? Because they are basically a monopoly in this particular space, and they are the same thing. Look at that. So when it comes down to it, before you start looking at individual companies, identify the industry that you're looking at and saying, is this industry poised for growth over a long period of time that's very secular in nature, that keeps going? And is there a moat around it to the point where they can keep like raising prices and still be profitable and all the other stuff? So how crazy is this chart that you're looking at, Matt?
Pretty nice.
It makes you think like, man, how come I didn't know about this sooner? Right?
7 and 7.5x in 23 years, 24 years.
Yeah. Well, this one is 56 to 300. So 6x in literally from 2019 to 2004. You know what the benefit of companies like this is? Unlike NVIDIA, as great as NVIDIA is, right? If you look at the 5-year chart in NVIDIA, you can see multiple times where it's got its breakout success. Let me just point out right here, breakout successes. And then they have literally 50% drawdowns and then rises again, right? It happened in 2021 during the crypto craze, and then it crashed, and then it's back up again. And once AI comes down, this shit will crash another 50%, and then something else will come. But basically, companies like AMD and NVIDIA, this is what keeps happening. They have a very cyclical business nature. But among the semiconductor space, there are other companies that have more up and to the right business models. So here's another one, and I'm sure that you know, is CMG, which is Chipotle Mexican Grill, right? Look at this. Up and to the right for the most part. Yes, they've had their drawdowns because of post-COVID and everything else, but for the most part, look at this, right? Another one, Starbucks. So, stack. Right now, they're going through their pains, but this is primarily because they're in a mature phase of their business cycle, right? But if you look at them since the beginning, it's pretty much up and to the right for the most part. Yes, they've had moments of success and they've had drawdowns here and there, but for the most part, they're up and to the right. So I think before we do anything, we have to look at the business model. Now, why does Dutch Bros interest us? And why do some of these other companies interest us? Why? Because they can scale out. They have a successful product that they can that can keep replicating. And the way that these companies, they make their money is not on just inside sales, but selling the franchises out there and branding and all the other things that they can do. So these are high margin, high growth businesses that can be there for decades. Right now, there are some companies that are running into the problem that there's really no more expansion ability. Like, so Starbucks is hitting a wall, and where's the next market that they're going to target? So I would say Dutch Bros is in its early innings of being something that's an up and to the right company for a while, and we want to ride that wave. Same thing with a lot of other things. So Wingstop for me is another company that I have that's done exceptionally well. If you go to Wingstop's up and to the right. They're expanding. So, so first thing is just find a business that is scaling up, that's growing, that's still at a point where there's still a lot of additional room for growth. I think Celsius is in the same position right now where if you think about it, the cost of production, as you scale up, the cost goes down. So, imagine right now you make a batch of a million cans. The cost to make a million cans per unit is a lot more than what it would be if it was a billion units. So if they sell a billion units, right, the cost is actually not as high on a per unit basis. So what does that mean? That means that over time their margins keep expanding. Did people get me like in the thing?
I'm getting there, yeah.
So that's one of the keys that you have to remember, that some businesses, they have this ability where once they catch fire, they're up and to the right. That's not going to slow down anytime soon. So,
and I think another piece for Dutch Bros, I probably differentiated because I wrote an article about Dutch Bros, and shout out to myself. I'm now a 5-time author on Seeking Alpha.
Congrats, man! Congrats.
I'm pretty much a genius. I'm pretty much a genius. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. But no, it's I wrote an article on Dutch Bros, and somebody in the comment section, is either today, a couple days ago, whatever, they basically stated, well, they're never going to be Dunkin' Donuts. It's like, well, Dunkin' Donuts has a different business model. They franchise a lot. Dutch Bros is going to the avenue where they're going to have company-owned stores. And if you correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, I think Wingstop is also seeing the same opportunity where they're going with a lot more company-operated stores because the margins are so good for them. The gross profit margins per store, at least in Dutch Bros' case, about 31%. So after you pay for a lot of those other things like cost of labor, et cetera, they're still walking away with close to 20% in net income potential. So when you think about it, why do that if you can get 31% gross margin on your store versus franchising and only get 5% of the revenue per store? And the problem with franchising as well is you can't maintain company culture as well as you can with something like as a Dutch Bros. So yeah.
By the way, if you guys get a chance, make sure you follow Matt in on Seeking Alpha. His articles are actually getting a lot of steam, man. I saw some of them; they're doing really well.
Yeah, I'm trying my best. What is that? Dutch Bros 51 comments. What does that say?
Right here, Dutch Bros is a 5-year buy and hold. Yeah, you got 51 comments.
51. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll be it's going to be interesting. I think a lot of people don't necessarily think about that piece of it, right? And people are like, well, Dunkin' Donuts has however many locations. It's like, well, you don't need that many locations if you're maintaining all of the revenue within your system rather than specifically franchise revenue. So that was what the big difference was with Dutch Bros in the past. They didn't have many company operated stores. Now they're focusing only on company operated stores, which is why they actually IPO'd to get that capital to help fund some of that company operations because they recognized how profitable the business was. And so when it goes to, you get yourself to having 4,000 locations like they're expecting, well, you talk about 4,000 locations, each making about $1.7 to $2 million a location. I mean, you're talking anywhere between like $8 and $10 billion of revenue per year. And then I'm sure there's other opportunities, but you think about it from a net income basis, if you're able to walk away with 20% net income, maybe 25%, if you really get things up and running. Key things are, for Dutch Bros specifically, they're opening up a roastery in Dallas. At the moment, all their roastery items, so all the coffee beans, etc., are coming from Oregon. So at the moment, they're driving everything from Oregon to Texas and everything of the like. Think about how much cost that is logistically and etc. Now, if you have a roastery in Dallas, that opens up the whole eastern side of the nation, because now instead of having to drive all the way from Oregon to Florida, you can go from Dallas to Florida, which is literally cutting the time period in half for you to have to access that. I anticipate within the coming years, you're going to see them opening up another roastery, whether that's in kind of the Midwest or Ohio or Pennsylvania sort of area, so that way it can drive all the way to the Northeast, it can fund all the way to Florida, etc. That's my thought process. You're just going to have at least 3 roasteries that they can kind of, and that's just going to help supply better margins to all these businesses. And then two, what else was I thinking? Shit, there was another piece there that I was literally coming up on. But yeah, I mean, if you think about it, $8 to $10 billion in revenue in the next 10, 15 years might not sound like a lot, but if you have 20% margins, then you're looking at $1.6 to $2 billion a year potentially in net income. And if you put on a 10 to 15x multiple on that, then you're looking at a company that's worth 20 billion. The company at the moment is only worth 5. So you're gonna see the potential of what this looks like going forward as they continue to expand. You were gonna say something about Celsius here, huh, Chris?
Yeah, it's fine. I'll do it another time. It's getting kind of late.
Yeah, but apologies
No.
we didn't get to talk much about Abcellera. I know we'll talk about it either tomorrow when MateoDinero is in session or Thursday.
Do you want to know something that's super crazy about Celsius? How many employees do you think Celsius has?
250.
Close to, I think, less than, hold on one second, profitability. How many employees? Their net income per employee right now is like $400,000 per employee, where the sector median is like 19. That's crazy, right? But that's because like they are, all the distribution and everything is being done by Pepsi. So where's their head count? God damn it. Where is in their balance sheet? Total employees. Right here, total employees. They have 378 employees. You know, for a fucking $15 billion company, only
That's impressive.
358. And look at the growth rate. So if you think about it, their growth is not gonna, they're not gonna hire crazy amounts of people, and all this is just gonna be profitability, man. You know, they do third party, they pretty much do let third parties do the manufacturing, you know, and so all this is like a software company, to be honest with you, dude. And people don't even realize it. They have software kinds of scalability, software like margins, and they're parading themselves around as a goddamn fucking, you know, as a drinks company. Do you understand? Like,
I'm excited, man. I'm excited.
It's crazy.
I honestly think
crazy.
that when is it Thursday that the earnings are for Celsius? I forget.
I have to double check, but look at their revenue growth, right? They went from 50 million in 2021 to now per quarter 384 million, and it's just growing like crazy. Their gross profit is 194 million dollars. Who has gross margin like this? SaaS. You're not going to get this kind of gross margin in a lot of other businesses. And then look at their operating income, almost generated $100 million in operating income last quarter. And this is like, as the revenue scales up, their cost of revenue does not grow as fast. And this just keeps getting higher and higher. They have almost no debt, so they don't really have to worry about too much interest costs. And their net income, look at its net income growth. It doubled over the last 3 quarters. Like, revenue per share, I mean, per share is growing like this fast right now. Look at this. They're not diluting shareholders with a ton of SBC like the other software companies are, right? If you look at their balance sheet, they've got almost $1 billion on the balance sheet wise. Their assets, if you include receivables, about 1.2 billion. You know, the liabilities, their current liabilities are barely anything. You know, basically it's just taxes. Long-term debt, none. You know.
Okay, so Celsius is next Wednesday. What the heck is the 21st and 22nd? I know Rocket Lab is next week as well. The hell, something's happening. I mean, I know Nvidia is this week, so I don't know what I'm trying to think. Something else important for me this week that I need to be aware of, and I'm not thinking straight as to what it is. My brain's already in Mexico. Dan, I was kind of hoping that Celsius is going to be there because I know Tevis and I are going to be in La Mexico tomorrow, and I was hoping we'd be able to live stream it together. A bunch of margaritas if things were going well. Shit,
dude, I think Celsius. I modeled it out. I really did. Like, even the most conservative model gives me $100 a share by 2026. It's such a. This is like. I can't believe this is such a fucking no-brainer.
So let me give some context. So some people are asking some pretty rudimentary questions, and that's okay because I know we're catering to all investors, right? So dilution, companies can do what they call share-based compensation. So they're basically making. There's multiple ways of diluting shareholders, by the way. So this is just one or two of them.
Yeah, I gotta head out, so I'll talk to you later.
Okay,
Right?
yeah, I'll explain this one, but I'll talk to you tomorrow if I can get on. So to answer this one out, thanks to Hot Chris, by the way, is always a great time to have a conversation with him. To answer the share-based compensation piece or the dilution piece, companies sometimes have their compensation packages supplemented by providing people with shares to help incentivize or provide the opportunity to gain ownership in the business. And some of it is a tactic to maybe pay potentially less for upside in the future if you say dedicate your time, etc. And the company does really, really well. Palantir does this a good bit. Snowflake does this a good bit. Google, a lot of tech companies pay a lot in share-based compensation. And that's part of the reason why buybacks for some of these companies are such a big reason why they do them. For example, Google buys back a crap ton of shares. And while you think like, oh my God, they probably reduced the float by 25%, they've only reduced the float by 15% over the past 5 years. So a lot of that is because it's offset by the share-based compensation piece. And then second, companies that are unprofitable or are trying to expand quickly and might not have the financial fortress to lean back on might have to give up a percentage of the company and create shares to be able to get cash. So, for example, one of the things that Dutch Bros had done right after the third quarter, going into the fourth quarter, was they did a dilution of about however much. It was like 6% or something of the company shares, maybe more. And they did it for $300 million. And so basically said, you give us $300 million, we'll give you a large portion of the company. Now, companies might do that because they see the upside potential. They're also getting, potential for, a loan or something like that. Then there's convertible debts. So something that Rocket Lab had just done where they were going to do a $250-300 million convertible debt offering. So basically the company gives them, say, $300 million. They get paid, an annual interest rate or semi-annual interest rate, but then they also get a percentage of the company to hopefully realize upside. So this individual is hoping in, say, 10 years, they get their $300 million back cash. They were able to make 4.5%. And they're also able to walk away with, say, 5-10% of a company, which they think is going to be able to be worth however many. So they're helping in the short term. But because of that, and not every company does this, like some companies that have better financial footing, longer track records, etc., they offer just bonds. And generally speaking, bonds don't really have too much dilutive issues. It's mostly strictly cash, right? You give me $1 billion, I pay you once or twice a year. You call it a day. So there's that kind of thought process. But when you do that, you're diluting shareholders, right? You're creating shares. So people always talk about stock price. They think like, oh my God, well, Tesla stock is $190. That's more than the $150 stock price for Google. Therefore, Tesla is a bigger company than Google. No, that's not true. If that was the case, then Berkshire Hathaway would be the most expensive company and most largest company. But we know that Apple is in fact, or Microsoft is in fact, close to a $3 trillion company. So how does that work? Well, every company has what was called a market cap, and that's generally speaking what all these shares are kind of based off of. So when they do a stock split or anything like that, it's literally just a piece of pie, right? So if this pie is, let's just say, worth $1 billion, and then this pie is also worth $1 billion, you can split this pie up into 100 shares. You can split this pie up into 200 shares. This share price is going to be worth $50. This one's going to be worth 100, but they're still the same amount of pie. They're still the same value. So when you think about it, most of the time, I just eliminate share price altogether. I look at things mostly on what the market cap of the company is worth, what the actual net income of the company is worth. the thing with earnings per share is that it can be manipulated by share buybacks, etc. So I generally look at net income, and I look at for the entire business, and I look at market cap of the entire business, and I do things on an actual 3 income statement, 3 financial statement sort of way to distract from all that other stuff, right? And I think that there's a reason why there's share prices, right? Because obviously nobody is out here buying $300 billion businesses. They have to buy a portion of the $300 billion business. But they also do stock splits so that they can, issue more shares or make it more digestible. Like Walmart's doing a 3-for-1 stock split. I had people ask me, they're like, is that a good thing? Should I get in on that? They did have a good quarter from what I understand. I haven't done the due diligence on that, but it gets people fired up, right? It gets that kind of investor relations sort of word out there. Oh my God, they're doing a stock split. Should I be involved in that? Is that something that gets people's kind of like ears perked up, gets people's thoughts in the market? You probably weren't even thinking about Walmart till you heard that there was a stock split. Next thing you know, you're thinking, man, should I be involved? Why is it having a stock split? Is it really going up that much that we need a stock split? So all that kind of plays into that dilution piece there, and hopefully that gives you some color. Hot Tom, the man, the myth, and the legend, doing some good work. Celsius did a 3-for-1 split, which is bad news. I don't know how that's bad news, but okay. Michael Anthony only wants me to invest in Kraft Heinz Company. Everything else, including Rocket Lab, Palantir, is a joke. Bros just took a big shut up after hours ahead of earnings tomorrow. That's who it is. It's Dutch Bros. God, I'm so dumb. Anyway, here's a good example of dilution of shares. This is Evergreen for Palantir. Oh yeah, didn't they just do 100 million shares or something dilution? And this is one of the things that I was talking about with in my Palantir article. Which let me just go through that and then I'll end on that. So I just published a Palantir article, and by no means am I the best writer in the world. I'll just state that as a fact, but it did get some people chit-chatting. So for those of you that are interested in Palantir, it was one of my risks in here. So this was published yesterday morning. We're receiving pretty good looks at it. I think there's over 5,000 people that have read it thus far. So appreciate everybody that's had the opportunity. It just talks a little bit about the past 5 years, my investment thesis, why I think it should kind of remain at this $25 range for the foreseeable kind of future. It'll dip down to 20, it'll go up to 30, etc. But one of the things that I wanted to state in here, obviously the street, major risks, uncertainties, and drags on the stock. This is the perfect example. Share-based compensation or dilution. What I say won't be unique to Seeking Alpha analysts. The dilution of share-based compensation is not as much as a problem as it was when the share price was $6 just a short year ago. However, the $400 to $450 million a year in share-based compensation will impact GAAP net income in the short term, elevating the PE ratio of Palantir. At the current rate, dilution would be less than 1% per year based on the recent comps in 2023. Will that sustain? As an organization grows, headcount will end up being a 2% dilution, more. So I need to fix that statement. More, and Palantir will end up having approved $1 billion of buybacks, is yet to deploy them. At what rate is it appropriate to begin those buybacks? Do you start now and partly offset the share-based compensation? Do you wait until you make fully sufficient cash flows from operations and GAAP net income to fully offset? How will buybacks compete with the other needs in the financial frame? All prudent questions to ask, and it is way too early to tell. We must watch and see. And then yet today, immediately, they dilute shares. So I don't know what to tell you. I'm what you call a wizard. No, I'm just kidding. Crack myself up. But anyway, I'm going to call it on that. Yes, Dutch Bros is up. Post the link for those of you that do have Seeking Alpha private accounts. There you go. What else is there? Appreciate it. I can't guarantee that I will be on tomorrow with Chris Patel. Please, if you guys have the opportunity to do so, please. We have now hit 4,000 watch hours on Cashflow Chronicles TV. That means we just need to get 200 more subscribers on Cashflow Chronicles TV, and then we will be fully transitioning over there. So if you guys, 80 of you, really enjoy watching these live streams, your friends, family, others also and enjoy the live stream, please be sure you do that. We are no longer posting a backlog of videos. It is strictly replays of actual live streams. So, for example, nothing old will be posted between now and the next time this video is posted. After this video is posted, it will no longer be available on the Matt Money channel. It will be delisted and eventually be uploaded to the Cashflow Chronicles channel, where eventually we will be fully transitioning in due time. This is not necessarily for a cash grab. This is so Chris and I can grow amicably as a crew together. We can split it 50-50. At the moment, I'm even providing Chris and also because everything we do is reinvesting back into the public portfolio. That $1,700 includes some of my own money that I'm foregoing. We are hoping, and this is my bet in Cashflow Chronicles, that it continues to be a very profitable endeavor for both Chris and I going into the future. So please, 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 please do that opportunity, and would love to grow that to be several thousand people where we can eventually do private streams and everything like that. So if you guys really enjoyed that, hopefully you were able to join us over there. We are 190 people away. Much appreciated for the two of you that just joined unsubscribed over there. What else is there? That's pretty much it. I'm excited to go hang out in Mexico with Tevis tomorrow. He's not telling anybody. I'm telling everybody I'm excited. He's obviously not excited to hang out with me, and he's obviously embarrassed. So somebody can screen clip that. I'm pissed. Just kidding. But anyway, really good to hang out with you guys as always. Love doing these streams. Always learn a lot from Chris. I'm just rambling on because I'm avoiding packing because I still have to pack for my trip, and I get on a plane in less than 10 hours. So, all right, I'll talk to you soon. I'm going to end this bad boy. I will talk to you in Mexico maybe tomorrow, if not Thursday. Cheers. Have a good night.